What would you say if I told you that this fight doesn't involve lightsabers or blasters? 'Cause it doesn't. The scene in question is the first Force Bond scene of the Rise of Skywalker. It's a brief scene lasting around 1 minute and 14 seconds, and in terms of plot progression, not much happens other than Kylo being able to learn the location of Rey and her team. Now, why call this a fight? Usually fighting is the struggle of physical blows, but in storytelling, the emotional battles are usually the heart of the story, and this scene is no exception. Now, on a surface level, this scene may seem a little weird. If you were to read a transcript of the exchanges between Rey and Kylo Ren, it doesn't resemble a natural conversation. Most of the responses given by both characters aren't even responses to the previous statements, but that's what makes this scene so interesting. Any scene, whether it be a fight or a simple exchange of dialogue, should serve as its own smaller contained story, with an inciting incident, rising action, and a resolution. Furthermore, any scene should have a central conflict, and the way that characters navigate said conflict is what makes a story. We should understand the characters' internal and external goals during the scene, so the actions they make in response to the central conflict make perfect sense. So let's dive deep into this scene and the narrative breakdown behind what's going on. The two players of this scene are Rey and Kylo Ren. The conflict of this scene revolves around the search for the Wayfinder. At this point in the story, Rey is trying to find the Wayfinder, and Kylo wants to find Rey so he can turn her to the dark side. So the two external goals are established. However, it's the internal goals that make this scene more interesting. Internal goals are usually fully character related and have very little to do with the actual plot. Given the events of the previous movie, we understand what the two want from each other. Rey wants Kylo Ren to turn back to the light side, and Kylo wants Rey to turn to the dark side. These internal and external goals are in direct opposition to one another, which sets the stage for the conflict of this scene. As I said earlier, any scene should have an inciting incident, which is the event that causes this scene to happen. In this case, we know from the previous movie that these two have force bonds that seem to appear out of nowhere during inconvenient times. So Rey starts to sense that a bond is about to happen. A few seconds into the scene and the inciting incident has happened. The two are connected through the bond, and it's time for the rising action. Let's analyze their dialogue here and how it moves the scene towards a resolution.
Palpatine wants you dead.
Serving another master?
No. I have other plans.
So what is accomplished here? Kylo states how Palpatine wants Rey dead, but it's Rey's next line that sets the tone of the conflict. She says, serving another master. This is kind of a shot at Kylo's ego here. She's basically saying, oh, you can't handle being on your own, so you need to go serve someone else. It's a small jab, and Kylo quickly deflects by saying he has other plans. This exchange doesn't move the conflict towards a resolution, but it does set the tone of this fight. Let's continue.
I offered you my hand once. You wanted to take it. Why didn't you?
You could have killed me. Why didn't you?
As I said earlier, a lot of this scene on the surface level doesn't make much sense. They go from talking about Palpatine, to when Kylo offered Rey his hand, to when Kylo refused to kill Rey. But looking at their internal goals, these responses make perfect sense. Remember, they want to turn the other to their respective side of the Force. But from The Last Jedi, they know each other is not fully committed to their side. Rey has been tempted by the dark side, and Kylo has been tempted by the light side. With these two lines of dialogue, they both subtly remind the other of their temptations. They both know each other very well, but since they ended The Last Jedi on not so great terms, they both have their guard up. Let's continue.
You can't hide, Rey. Not from me.
I see through the cracks in your mask. You're haunted. You can't stop seeing what you did to your father.
Kylo begins with a comment related towards the plot. He's deflecting Rey's previous comment. They both know he didn't kill Rey because he wants to be with her. He changes the conversation back to their external goals. Kylo wants to find Rey, so he's telling her that she can't hide. Rey, however, decides to take another jab at Kylo. She reminds Kylo that he is still haunted by killing his father. This is another reminder that there's still good in Kylo, and she knows that. However, it's the way that she mentions his mask that is really revealing. Kylo has only taken his mask off for Rey in this entire trilogy without having to be asked. He's been vulnerable with her. She's basically telling him that the mask isn't going to hide that conflict that rests in him. She's trying to expose Kylo. Let's see what happens next.
Do you still count the days since your parents left? Such pain in you. Such anger. I don't want to have to kill you. I'm going to find you, and I'm going to turn you to the dark side.
Kylo is now clearly frustrated and he is holding no punches. His next comment is directly attacking Rey's greatest weaknesses, her insecurities about her parents and herself. Rey reminded Kylo that there was still good in him, and now Kylo is reminding Rey that there is still darkness inside her. It's a perfect response to Rey trying to expose the light in him. Maybe he can throw Rey off balance to get her to give in to her anger. Kylo Ren continues,
When I offer you my hand again, you'll take it.
We'll see.
Kylo reminds Rey that he's going to turn her to the dark side, but he's also giving Rey an ultimatum here: turn to the dark side or die basically. However, it's Rey's response that is the highlight for me, when she says, "We'll see." Now, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but to me this was a callback to the interrogation scene in The Force Awakens, when Kylo said, "We'll see."
I'm not giving you anything.
We'll see.
She's basically telling him good luck with trying to turn me to the dark side. Both characters are now further away from accomplishing their internal goals, so this scene has accomplished its goal. The goal of this scene was to establish that both characters do not plan on changing sides of the Force to be with the other person. This was already the case at the end of The Last Jedi, but it's important to re-establish this in the beginning of this movie. The scene has reached its highest point of tension, and now it's time for the resolution. Since both characters have now moved away from accomplishing their internal goals, Kylo wins the external battle by taking the necklace and eventually using it to get Rey's location. So that is my analysis of this scene of The Rise of Skywalker. As I said earlier, this scene may not be a physical fight, but the internal battle between these two characters is far more interesting than any physical fight. And that is why I feel this is the most underrated fight in the sequel trilogy.